Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to bend your ear for a little while on one of my favorite subjects, which is backyard fruit growing. And I think the antioxidants program that I put together here, I think is very timely. You know, we're all trying to become more health conscious and considering what we're putting into our bodies. And I think if you're growing some of these varieties in your own garden, you know how you're caring for them, you know how they're being treated, you know what you're fertilizing with, you understand if you have a spray program or no spray program, you can be as organic as you want. And I think that's one of the most important things to consider when you're doing backyard fruit growing is you want to have control over the product. You want to have control over what you're producing. And we don't have that when we deal with grocery store produce. And we also don't really have the opportunity to experience tree ripen or vine ripen produce, because as you know, what they ship to the market is probably picked 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 weeks before it's prime. And sometimes flavor can be a little lackluster. In fact, I've experienced a few things at the grocery store where I think the box maybe tasted better. So it's nice to be able to do some of these things in our backyard. And I'm an enthusiast myself. I have about 70 fruit trees in my landscape, and I can eat out of my backyard every day of the year. Whether, you know, right now I can still pick navel oranges, I can pick ruby grapefruit, I can pick mandarins. I have some early peaches and nectarines that are ready. I have cherries that are ready right now. I have avocados. The early apricots are coming in now. So there's all kinds of opportunity to grow things and harvest things out of our own backyard that are much, much, much better and much healthier than what you're ever going to buy in a grocery store. So thanks for allowing me the opportunity, and let's kind of get started here. So let's see. Do I have to use this?
That's your easiest way.
Good.
You can use your mouse if you want.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. When I introduced myself, I told them I'm the least tech apt person that you'll probably ever meet. So even though I look like I should be. So what we're using to base some of these antioxidant values off of is the Auric oxygen radical absorbency capacity, the Auric scale. And this is a system that was put together many years ago to measure phytonutrients and the antioxidant values in fruits. So what I have based my basic presentation on is a 3.5 ounce to 4 ounce serving of fruit. And that's going to be the average size small plum. That would be a big handful of blueberries. That would be a dozen strawberries, you know, that would be a half an avocado. So it's an approximate 1 size serving of fruit. So if you eat the whole avocado, you're going to get twice as much. Or if you eat, you know, a larger serving, I mean, there are probably days when the recommended amount of antioxidant that we should take into our bodies every day is rated between 3,000 and 6,000 units per day. There are probably days when I'm ingesting 20,000 units. So I must be one of the healthiest people in the world by now. So I hope it lasts. So here's an approximation of the values with a 3.5 to 4 ounce serving. So a red pomegranate, 2,900, blueberries, 2,400, blackberry, 2,036, strawberry, 1,540, you know, so on down the line. So these dozen or so varieties are what I would consider superfoods. They're the highest value antioxidant of the average fruits that we can get. You know, there are others that are considerably higher, like goji berries and some varieties like that. But, you know, those are almost off the chart, and they're not, it's not near as nice to eat a handful of goji berries as it is to eat a handful of blueberries. So it's nice to go with some of the varieties that we know and love. So if we started off with pomegranate, you know, we're at about 2,900. The average size pomegranate that I'm getting off of my trees is about 12 to 14 ounces. So, if you ate a half a pomegranate, you're going to get over 2,900 ORAC units. Pomegranates are a very interesting plant. They're basically a desert native, and they were native to parts of China, parts of what was at one time the Soviet Union, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, areas like that, where a man by the name of Dr. Gregory Levin, who was in charge of the Gariella Research Station in Turkmenistan in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, went around all through that region and collected a collection of about 1,000 different pomegranate varieties. And Levin was one of the most highly respected experts on pomegranates in the world. And fortunately for us, Levin was able to trade back in the 1960s with UC Davis. So UC Davis was the recipient of about 20 of Levin's favorite varieties. And this one in particular, Parthionka, was out of Levin's collection. And Dr. Levin stated that in his book that he wrote, Pomegranate Roads, that Parthionka was the best pomegranate in the world. Now that's a bold statement. And I've been through the 240 varieties at the UC Davis Wolfskill collection. And there are very, very few fruits where I would put myself in a position to say, this is what I consider to be the best of the best of this particular variety. But I have to agree with Dr. Levin. I think Parthionka is the best pomegranate in the world. It's large, it's brightly colored, it's a completely non-detectable seed. It's a very crunchy, large arrow. It has a very punchy, sweet flavor. It's not acidic or astringent like the variety Wonderful that we normally see in the market or in the juice that we are buying in the store. So if I was only going to plant one pomegranate, it would definitely be this variety, Parthionka. It is definitely as good as they get. Now, with pomegranates being a plant that is native to more of a desert climate, that kind of gives us an advantage in how we can grow pomegranate. I don't want you to put it in the shade. I don't recommend that you put it in an area that gets regular irrigations or runoff from a lawn irrigation. And now, when we're in a drought stress condition in California, what better plant to put in than a pomegranate? You can put it in the hottest, driest part of your landscape. It's going to do well. It's going to give you beautiful flowers. It's going to produce in its second or its third year. And I can't imagine anything better for the conditions that we're growing under right now. It's a superfood. It's definitely one of those that we want to consider for areas in our landscape where we wouldn't want to put something that's going to require a lot of water or a little bit of shade. You want that hot blast, full sun, south-facing, west-facing wall, and they'll espalier very nice. There's all kinds of different things that we can do with pomegranates. Here's an example of one that's being grown as a standard, as a little patio tree. And a lot of farmers, a lot of commercial growers are actually trying to train pomegranates as a standard so that they can keep the fruit up off the ground, keep the skirt up off the ground. They can do, tilling, or they can plant cover crops, or they can do anything they need without disturbing the crown of the plant. But a pomegranate wants to be a multi. It wants to be a shrub. It's very difficult to maintain it as a standard. So you'll put a little more effort into maintaining it as a standard, but definitely makes a good shrub and definitely gives us the ability to grow something as a screen. They espalier very nice. They hedgerow very nice. A lot of growers up in the Central Valley right now are using pomegranates as a screen plant or as a border plant. They can be a little thorny, and they have planted on a tight spacing would certainly keep people from intruding as well. Now, one of the things that I learned about pomegranates was in exploring some of the old ranch sites and farm sites and pioneer sites in California, was every time I walked out onto an old abandoned ranch site, you'd see a dead walnut tree or a dead peach tree or a dead pear tree or trees that just didn't make it, through the seasons of neglect. And all of a sudden you'd see this beautiful green globe and you'd walk up to it, and 9 out of 10 times it was a pomegranate. So they thrive on neglect. They don't really need a whole lot of extra TLC to be a successful plant for you. So here's an example of a commercial orchard up in the San Joaquin Valley. you see they're keeping everything skirted up and keeping all that low growth cleaned away. Absolutely, yeah. You know, regular irrigation will give you a much better quality fruit. So blueberries, probably one of my favorite categories. I'm a big fan of all the southern high bush blueberry varieties for Southern California. There's all kinds of different ratings and chill recommendations on blueberries, but I'll tell you, I've found over the years that any variety that is a southern high bush or hybridized with southern high bush basically requires no chill at all. I've never found a variety that was rated at 400 or 500 or 600 hours that didn't produce really well for me. Now, blueberries are a specialty type plant. They're not something that we're going to just plant like a pomegranate. We're not going to stick it out into the garden somewhere where it's not going to get any care. In fact, blueberries require two very specific things to thrive. Number one, a very fast draining soil. They don't like to stay stagnant. They don't like to stay wet, or the soil becomes anaerobic and the root system will rot out. So fast drainage is important. The second thing is an acidic soil condition. They like a pH below 6.5. So the pH perfect would be probably around 6, 5.5. So if you can maintain it at that, you're going to use a soil or a media that contains quite a bit of peat moss, maybe some perlite. You can work some sand in there. You can work some orchid bark or a green waste recycle compost in there. Just make sure you're maintaining that drainage and you're keeping that pH acidic. So a little shot of soil sulfur a couple times a year, a humic acid based fertilizer like Grow Power Flower and Bloom that'll help to keep that pH low for you. If they don't drain well, or if they're in an area where there's too much alkalinity in the water or the soil, they will not do well at all. So you definitely want to make sure that you're giving them the culture. In fact, blueberries, in my opinion, and I don't recommend this for most fruit trees, container growing is temporary for fruit trees. You can maintain a fruit tree in a container for 3 years, 5 years. I've got a lot of them in half barrels, and you know, as long as you're keeping them in balance with the root zone they're growing in, you can maintain them until the barrel rots away. Blueberries are a perfect container plant. It's very, very easy to maintain that acidic condition. It's very easy to maintain that drainage. So I love blueberries in either a raised bed using an acidic media, or in containers where the drainage is good. Yeah, some of the varieties are Misty, O'Neill, South Moon, Sunshine Blue. You know, there's a list on our website. There's about a dozen different southern high bush varieties that will all do well in California. Blueberries are all self-fruitful. They don't require any cross-pollination, but I'll tell you from personal experience, if you have at least 3 varieties, you're going to have 10 times the fruit. So I've planted many barrel combinations where I have 3 or 4 varieties planted together in one barrel and just kind of grown out like one shrub. I like to do a heavy pruning on mine once a year, and you want to do that pruning right after the fruit is completely ripe. So about middle of July, 1st of August, once all the blueberries are harvested from spring and early summer, I take the plants back into a balance again with the container that they're growing in, let them flush out one more time, and that flush of growth that they get in August, September, October is going to be your fruiting wood for the following spring. So one thing you never want to do with blueberries is you never want to winter prune a blueberry, because every cut you make in the winter, you're actually taking away fruiting wood for the next spring. So we talked about using a container, using keeping that pH low and using the right soil consistency. That's all important. So here's a little recommendation on soil mix. Third part pathway bark, third part wood chip mulch, a third part peat moss. You can work some sand in there. You can work in some sponge rock or not perlite. What's the other one? Vermiculite, something like that. So you just want to make sure you've got the drainage and the acid. Here's an example of a few blueberries in containers. Here's a kind of a unique variety. You know, they're coming out with a lot of new hybrids nowadays, and this is a pink blueberry. So it doesn't actually turn blue, but this is one of the varieties, pink lemonade, that is actually bringing the most money on the commercial market now for ripe fruit. The dessert chefs love this. They'll give you a piece of cheesecake with a little blueberry compote and a half a dozen pink lemonade blueberries on it, and they'll only charge you like $12 or $14 for it. So cane berries, blackberry, raspberry, boysenberry, these are all very important sources of high antioxidant. And I thought it was really interesting. One of the things that most high antioxidant value fruits have in common is the darker the pigment, the higher the antioxidant value. But with cane berries, it was a little different. We had blackberries rated at about 2,050 and red raspberries rated at about 1,250. But boysenberries, which are as dark as a black raspberry, were only rated at about 1,000. So boysenberry actually had a little less antioxidant value than the other cane berries. Now, cane berries can definitely be somewhat of a challenge. They can become rangy, they can become large. If you don't maintain them well, they can cover your house. So cane berries are something that you're going to have to use a process of rejuvenation on almost every year. So you want to, if you planted a cane berry this spring, you would allow all that growth to come up this spring and summer. You would tie that up to a trellis or some sort of an arbor. You would then allow that plant to give you your fruit the following year. So that 1-year-old cane is going to fruit the second spring and the second summer. You're meanwhile allowing new growth or new bramble to come up from the ground level. And then as those berries are done, as you harvest all your berries throughout that season, that next fall, you would take out all that year-old cane that was tied up and then bring all the new cane up. So you're basically rejuvenating the plants every year to give you that finished structure, that fruiting structure every year. And that's, most of the conventional varieties are like that. Now, we do have a couple of new varieties on the market that have only been out about 8 or 10 years now. Some of them, blackberry varieties, have come from the University of Arkansas, and they're the Primark series, and those are primocane varieties. So they will fruit on first-year wood. So if you plant a variety called Primark 45 or Primark Freedom, which is thornless, you can mow that down to the ground every winter, and the new cane will give you fruit every spring and summer. There's also a red raspberry variety that does that called Caroline. So if you don't like the old conventional method, which can be kind of clumsy and time consuming, then those new varieties, the Primark series on blackberries or the Caroline series on red raspberry, will give you fruit every year on new cane. We also have a couple of nice dwarf varieties out there that you can grow in containers, and they also fruit on new cane. And that would be Baby Cakes Blackberry, which is a dwarf bush-form thornless blackberry, or Raspberry Shortcake, which is a dwarf red raspberry bush. And both of those varieties do well. What the cane berries require, they'll take a diversification of soil types, but they do like good drainage. They like to stay slightly moist, and they do like good drainage. So you want to make sure that you're not putting those somewhere where they're going to dry out, or you're maintaining a fairly even moisture content, but not an area that's going to stay soggy. I'm finding on my cane berries right now, I'm probably able to pick off of 4 different plants, 1 boysenberry, 2 blackberries, and 1 raspberry. I'm probably able to pick a good sized, soup bowl of fruit almost every day now. And my granddaughters make quick use of that. So plums are another one. We have a lot of dark pigmented plums, and the red and black plums were very high in antioxidant. The average plum, I think we're looking about 1,000 ORAC units for a red plum, and about 1,150 to 1,200 for a black plum. So again, the darker the pigment, the higher the antioxidant value. Plums are very popular, as well as plum hybrids, the interspecifics like cherry plums, Blueberries, pluots, things like that that have a little apricot parentage or a little cherry parentage in them. And they're interspecific hybrids. They're not genetically modified. I get that question all the time. Well, are those GMO? No, they're old-fashioned hybrids that were done by crossing the flower of one to the flower of another, growing on the progeny, evaluating that fruit, and then selecting interspecific hybrids out of that. And many of the cherry plums and the pluots nowadays they're not just F1, you know, plum by apricot or plum by cherry. They might be F4, F5, X6 hybrids that have, you know, 25 or 30 years worth of hybridization behind them. So they're bringing out new varieties all the time, and many of those were developed 20, 30 years ago, but they're just now at a point where they can start to release some of those. So there's a lot of new varieties on the market. There's a lot of varieties that are low chill adaptable. In Southern California, we're certainly not getting the chill that we were 20 years ago, and we're not getting the chill that we were 50 years ago. I remember as a kid, varieties that my grandmother had, like elephant heart plum, that, you know, requires 600-700 hours of chill. Well, I can't get an elephant heart to plum to fruit for me now to save my life. So most of our chill nowadays in Southern California is probably somewhere between 100 and 300 hours, depending on the year. In my trials down at the Irvine Field Station with apples and peaches and interspecifics, I had a year, I think it was either 2015 or 2016, that was actually 75 hours negative chill. So, you know, we're not getting the chill that we used to. So you want to make sure, if you're selecting a peach, a plum, a nectarine, an apricot, you're looking at varieties that are low chill adaptable and are going to do well in the area.
And when you say interspecific, what does that mean exactly?
That's a hybrid between a plum and an apricot, or a plum and a cherry. So those are, you know, Blueberries or pluots. So they're hybrids, not genetic modifications. So when it comes to growing plums or growing any type of a fruit tree, I don't know if you guys are familiar with my philosophies on backyard orchard culture, but I'm the guy that recommends that all trees be kept at a manageable size. And especially something like a peach, a plum, a nectarine, an apricot, an apple, a pear, and something that has a short fruiting window. I mean, there are a lot of plum and peach varieties that may only give you 2 or 3 weeks worth of a fruiting window. So the very first tree that I planted when my wife and I bought our first house in 1978 was a Santa Rosa plum. And I thought, okay, I'll grow this tree up and get me lots of nice plums off it. So 4 or 5 years down the road, this tree is now 15, 16 feet tall. And I'm unless I get out a big ladder or a big pole pruner or something, I'm not getting any of that fruit up on top. So the idea through some other philosophies by my friend Ed Livo, my friend Craig Miner, were, don't let that tree get that big. You want to bring that tree down where it's manageable from the ground. So for me nowadays, any trees in my orchard that give me a short fruit window are no more than I can reach from the ground. My plums, my peaches, my nectarines, my apricots, they're all, 7.5, 8 feet tall, where I can reach up, I can thin, I can prune, I can harvest, do all the work I need to do from ground level. A little different on avocados and citrus and things that hold on the fruit for several months. I don't mind, I don't mind picking avocados at 15 feet with a 10-foot pole and a basket picker, especially since they're $2 a piece now in the market. And John, you brought in some beautiful ones, by the way, those lamb hats. So on a tree like that, I can easily manage a 15-foot tree. But if it's a plum or a peach or a nectarine or an apricot, I'm bringing it back down to me. So I want to make sure to keep those trees small. So the philosophy is, when you buy a young bare root tree, that first cut should be knee high. You want to cut that top off it and regrow a nice low structure. And if you drive up through the San Joaquin Valley right now and look at all the commercial fruiting trees up there, every one of them was started off at a knee high cut, and every one of them is maintained at less than 10 feet tall now. So not even the commercial guys want to go up high to pick fruit anymore. So I tell you, you can maintain a tree at any size you want, but it's much easier to maintain a small tree than it is to maintain a big tree. And it's much easier to start with a small tree than to make a big tree small. Can be done either way, but it just works out a lot better if you make those first cuts low and grow that scaffolding structure out so that it's low and easy to manage. So there's second year. So you're going to come back in and reduce that growth by about 50% or 40% again. So there's third year. You're going to come back and hit that structure again. So you're creating a nice open vase shape to the tree. You want to grow it wider than tall. You want to grow something that you can work around. You can get to all the branches. You can harvest anything you want. But the nice thing about being able to manage a tree like this, whether it's a citrus or whether it's a deciduous fruit tree or a tropical fruit of any kind, is you know what? You're in charge. You're the one that's going to make the decision as to how tall that tree is going to be. And the only way that tree is going to grow beyond your capabilities is if you let it grow that way. You know, you've got a good sharp pair of clippers and you can keep that tree any size you want, keep it managed any way you want. If it gets too big, it's not the tree's fault, it's your fault. You want to just, you know, maintain that shape. You want to open it up. You want to take back some of that little growth that's growing in toward the center. So you have a lot of light, a lot of air movement. That light exposure and air movement will create a much better quality ripe fruit than having a real tight canopy. So things like citrus and avocados don't necessarily need to have as much as a stone fruit or a palm fruit would. So you want to, you know, predominantly look at your peach, plum, nectarine, apricots, you know, interspecific hybrids. Deciduous fruit trees in general would appreciate more light exposure and air circulation than most of the tropicals or subtropicals. So yeah, we can keep going with that, but you guys get the idea. So cherries, one of those categories where 30 years ago, if you would have asked me about cherries in Southern California, I would have said you're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. But you know, you could go into every home base store or Home Depot store back then, and you could buy a Bing cherry and a black Tartarian cherry that were rated at 700, 800, 900 chill hours. And we've never had that in even good years, many, many years ago. So cherries were not adaptable to our low chill Southern California environment until about 15 years ago, when the Zager family started hybridizing sweet cherry and sour cherry together. A lot of the sour cherry varieties had a much, much lower chill requirement than the sweet cherries. So they hybridized the sour parent in for low chill adaptability, and they rehybridized the sweet varieties back into the progeny. So we now have a whole series of cherries, Mini Royal, Royal Lee, Royal Crimson, that are rated in the 200 to 400 chill hour range. And I have had them for over 15 years now, and I have decent fruit every single year. Even in that negative 75 chill hour year, I had cherries on those trees. So there are definitely some cherry varieties you can grow in Southern California and be successful with. And I'll tell you what, there is nothing better than a bowl of fresh cherries off of the Mini Royal or Royal Crimson. That is a real treat. Decent value as far as antioxidant, 700 ORAC units for about a 3.5 to 4 ounce serving. And I think probably every time I sit down and eat cherries, I'm probably eating twice that amount. So if they're good, it's hard to put them down. Cherries are real adaptable, like most fruit trees are. And one of the ways that I've found that I really like to grow cherries is on a structure, you know, on a trellis. So they make a beautiful, beautiful espalier. So same principle. You would take that plant, you would cut it off low in the first year, and then you would kind of grow just grow that growth out for the first season, and then you can start to pull branches down and affix it to some sort of a structure. You don't want to start working with it on a trellis right away. You want to give it some time. You want to grow out a full season's worth of growth, and then you want to start to bring those branches down and work with it. So you're allowing those branches to stabilize. They can move in the wind, they can, you know, move in the air, and that's going to give you a much stronger structure to work with. Because that first year's worth of structural growth, that's going to be the base for your espalier. So if that grows out weak, then you're never going to make a good strong espalier. So you definitely want to pay attention to that and let that tree grow out well for the first year. At that point, you can, in that second summer, you can start to work on the structural branching, get the side branching laid out. You're going to start to develop some spur wood at that point. Now, cherries and plums as well, they don't necessarily produce on 1-year-old wood. They produce on fruiting spurs that are developed on 1 year and older wood. So 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year. I have cherries that are producing off of spurs. The same spurs are there that were there 10 and 12 and 14 years ago. So they'll keep producing off those same spurs over and over and over. So you want to make sure you allow those flowering spurs to develop within the structure. I was consulting for a couple probably 2 years ago, and they're like, we never get any cherries off our mini royal or any royal Lee cherries. What's wrong? And I went and looked at the tree, and I'm like, where's your fruiting spurs? I don't see any fruiting spurs. Are you just feeding with nitrogen and you're not developing any spurs? Well, what are spurs? So, well, they're those little horns that develop down in the lower structure on 2nd and 3rd and 4th year growth, and that's where your flowers come from. Oh, we've been cutting those off. So yeah, no cherries. So I said, when they come out, this summer, leave them alone, let them do that. So the next spring, you got a nice crop of cherries. So you definitely want to allow those spurs to develop. So after 2, 3, 4 years, you've developed a nice structure, and you certainly don't have to grow your cherries as an espalier if you don't want to, but it's a nice option. It gives you the ability to tuck a fruit tree into an area where you never thought you could put a fruit tree before. And that's one of the concepts of backyard orchard culture, is making good use of your space. So, people, hey, I want to plant a Meyer lemon, or I want to plant a pomegranate, or I want to plant a set of cherries, but all I have is an 18-inch wide planter bed and a south or a west facing wall. Good. Put it in, grow it out, put it on a trellis. So now you can maintain that plant in a style where it's easy to get to. You're keeping it only as high as you want, only as wide as you want. You get beautiful air movement and light exposure on that flat espaliered surface. So that espalier is a great way to grow fruit trees that most people never really consider. Space saving, and makes really good use of that space, and allows that fruit to ripen up excellent quality. So again, I got too many diagrams. We could go on and on and on, but you guys get the picture. I don't have to explain to the Hort Society what an espalier is. So, but eventually you can form, very, very nice big structure out of that. Blood orange. Blood oranges are really, really gaining in popularity now. I've seen more products with blood orange. You can get blood orange marmalade now. I had a blood orange cider the other day up on the Central Coast, and it was absolutely delicious. So something that people never really even realized was around. I mean, blood orange was almost extinct in California for many, many, many years. And when I first went to work for Laverne Nursery back in 1981, we started to propagate a few Moro blood orange, which had recently been released from the hybridizers at UC Riverside. And I had fruit that, first year I went and collected cyanwood at UC Riverside. Dr. Bitters was there, and, allowed me to cut wood, and, oh, you got to take some of this fruit. So I brought some of these Moro blood oranges home, and I cut one open, and I showed my wife, and I said, honey, you got to try this. This is a blood orange. And she looked at it and she goes, not a chance. No way. I'm not going to eat that fruit. I go, no, they're delicious. Just try a slice. No, don't want it. So my wife is a very intelligent lady. She was an attorney for 25 years, and I looked at her for most of the information that I get. The next year, I brought home some blood oranges, and I cut one open, and I said, honey, you got to try this. I'm not eating one of those blood things. I go, no, this is a burgundy orange. Oh, burgundy orange. Oh, that's delicious. So probably one of the few times in 40 years that I've actually fooled my wife into doing something like that. And I love to tell that story. And she hates it every time I tell it. But blood orange is, it's a beautiful citrus. It's a wonderful piece of fruit. There's 4 different varieties that you can get now in Southern California. There's Moro, which is going to be the darkest color. There's Sanguinelli, which is a close second. This is a variety called Tarocco, which is kind of a blushed variety. And then there's another one. There's a Tunisian blood orange that was just released by the Citrus Research Board called Bahubza. And that's another real nice variety. I actually just planted one. So blood oranges in antioxidant value. I have them on here somewhere. $7.50. Thank you. I should know this by heart. So, you know, you're getting a fairly substantial amount of antioxidant value out of them. The average size blood orange that I picked off of my trees this year, 4 to 5 ounces. So, you know, one blood orange is going to give you about 750, 800 ORAC units, and the fruit is just delicious. You can juice it, you can slice it up and eat it like you would a Valencia. You can make combination juices with it. I've made blood orange grapefruit, blood orange mandarin, blood orange lemon, blood orange lime, you know, and combinations of all those. So you can create your own juice blends, and you know, occasionally a little shot of vodka in there. Not too bad. Again, citrus makes a great espalier. You know, here's an example of a variety on just a small variety in a container on a trellis. Here's some that I had at my house a few years ago. So red and black grapes, very versatile vine. You can do almost anything you want with a grape. You can grow it, you can plant your own vineyard. You can grow it up a patio post. You can put it on a trellis. You can put it on an arbor. Grapes are something that, again, require some structural support. They're not going to do well on their own. You want to give them something to grow on. And grapes are something that will require a specific type of pruning. So I always tell people, if you're going to plant a grape, make sure you've got something to structure it on. The first 2 years should be developed to, or dedicated to developing that formal structure. So you're going to grow your grape out. You're going to, you know, move it out along your structure, and you're going to develop those canes. This is common practice in the Central Valley in California. This is a wine grape, Cabernet wine grape vineyard that's just down the street from our nursery, and you can see these vines are about 20 years old. So they've just grown them up a stake and then grown them out along a wire. You can be just that simple, but you can step them. You can do 2 or 3 tiers, or you can run them up on a patio post and grow them up as a cascade off of a patio if you want. So you can be simple, or you can be, you know, very, very structured and very, very formal with grapes. So once you get them to the structure that you want, you're going to follow one of 2 different pruning styles. This style right here is what we call cane pruning. So that means you're going to prune that structure back to leaving about 24 inches of last year's cane. And toward the end of that cane is where you're going to get your flowers on a cane variety. So the next type of pruning would be what we call spur pruning. And, you know, where my fingers are pointing down there, those are short fruiting spurs. So that is, you're going to leave 2 or 3 buds only of last year's growth and take most of the long canes away. Now, the nice thing about this variety, Cabernet Sauvignon, is you can either grow it as a cane prune or as a spur prune variety. So commercial growers sometimes will use both varieties on one vine, and that's an example of what they've done here. But I thought it was a good opportunity to show both different styles of pruning on one vine. Grapes, they like a well-drained soil, but you know, they'll take almost anything. I mean, I'm amazed. I was up in Atascadero and Paso Robles and the Central California wine country all of last week, and I met with a few vintners up there, and the soil strata that they're growing on, I mean, it's basically limestone shale. It's horrible soil. I wouldn't want to grow anything in that type of soil, but the grapes do absolutely wonderful. They love that type of soil. So they're very adaptable. As long as they have good drainage, they're going to do fine. So here's an example of a fully spur prune variety. You can see those short little fruiting spurs that they left from last year. So they do require a good annual heavy pruning. There's an example of a full cane prune variety. So when they leave those canes, they'll actually take those and tie those back in to the trellis system. Yep. Can I back up? I skipped forward too much.
There's the arrow to your left. There's two arrows. Go
Oh,
forward
yeah.
to that.
Hey, that makes perfect sense.
I know.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show you that shot. I think that was a really neat shot, and that was actually at a winery that was up in Central California, or Central Coastal California. Okay, let's move on to olives. So lots of enthusiasm in olives right now, especially in olive oil. So some of the first trees that were grown in California, you know, in the Mission era, but going all the way back to 1780s and 1790s were olives that were brought in from Spain and brought up through Mexico. And, you know, an olive tree, there are olive trees in the Middle East that are known to be over 500 years old. So an olive tree can live a very long, happy, healthy life. Green olives are just a black olive that's not ripe yet. They're not actually different types. They're just picked at different points of maturity. So most of the olives that are used for oil are used at a green stage, where most of the olives that are used for canning are used when they're fully ripe, although you still see a lot of green olives that are being canned. So olives were a decent ORAC unit. See if I can figure that one out. About 600 for green and about 800 for black. Now, I don't think I've ever sat down and eaten 3.5 or 4 ounces of olives in one sitting. Although I do have a Graber olive house out in Ontario, makes just an exquisite olive. And when we open a can of Graber olives, we will definitely finish the can. But I was, when I bought my house 25 years ago, where I'm at now, I was the lucky recipient of about a 60-year-old Sevillano olive that was in the front yard. And the day we were moving in, I had a knock on the door, and it was one of my neighbors from down the street. He introduced himself, you know, very nice man. And he said, I just want to let you know that that's my olive tree. And I said, well, you know, I have a real estate contract that would beg to differ on that. He said, no. He says, my family and I, we harvest all the olive trees in this neighborhood, and we can the olives, and we will come and pick your tree. We'll can the olives, and what we can, we'll give you back half. I reached out my hand and I said, that is your olive tree. And every year for probably 15 years, I was the lucky recipient of about 10 or 12 or 15 quart-sized jars of expertly preserved Sevillano olives. Unfortunately, my friend passed away a couple of years ago, and the family hasn't really followed along with this tradition, but they did tell me this year that they want to do it again this year as a family project. So I said, guys, come and pick the tree. I love the tree. It's a beautiful tree. It's just an excellent mature specimen, and I don't think there's anything more beautiful than a big multi-trunked 60 or 70-year-old olive tree. So I feel real fortunate to have it. Yes. I'm not. I'm real careful when I prune it. I've always disinfected my clippers, and my arborist that comes and does tree work for me, I make his guys dip his clippers in a 50-50 chlorine and water before they go to work on that tree. So I don't have any Xylella in that tree yet, but there are some trees in the neighborhood that are definitely showing it. Oh, it's in the area. Yes, I was there. I was there 3 or 4 weeks ago, and yeah, and met with you guys, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah. Well, that's just one of those things we're gonna have to, you know, hopefully learn to live with. And I would cry if this olive tree went down. So
What's gonna happen to all the farming?
that's a good question. And you know, we're selling olives in record numbers right now, mostly north of Sacramento, not much down lower than that. It's mostly all up the valley north of Sacramento, Oroville area, and like that. So a lot of commercial olives going in up there now. But beautiful tree, drought tolerant, fits into our Mediterranean style landscape expertly. You know, if it wasn't for the Xylella problem, it would be the perfect Southern California tree. And hopefully we'll get that one figured out, although I don't know if they will or not. So here's an example of an olive on a trellis. So again, you know, you can do that. That's in a 25-gallon tub at one of our customers that has a nursery up in the Fresno area. Strawberries, you know, and the thing that I like about this program is there's so many diversifications of plant types in this program. You have trees, you have shrubs, you have vines, you have things that you can keep small and compact and grow in any form that you want. And now you've got a little ground growing strawberry that you can use as a ground cover around some of those other plants and trees, or use it in containers, hanging baskets. I have a little collection of different strawberry varieties. I think I have 9 different strawberry varieties, you know, pink flowering, white alpine strawberries, variegated strawberries. You know, I think I just love the plant. I think it's so cool and you know, so easy to reproduce from runners, and a decent antioxidant value and very easy to grow. The snails and slugs will love them if you're growing them on the ground. So you definitely have to control your snails and slugs, but you can use them as a ground cover in containers. You can grow them in towers. You can grow them on hanging baskets. You can do almost anything you want with a plant like that. So very, very diverse, makes a beautiful little ground cover. And, you know, you can harvest off of my collection. I maybe have 30, 35 plants total. And I can, you know, go out and pick 4, 5 or 6 different types of strawberries almost any day. And the alpine varieties produce right through the summer, you know, even in the hottest part of summer, along with one of my red varieties as well. So I would say I could probably pick some strawberries on a weekly basis, 8 to 9 months out of the year. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Avocado, can't get enough of them. Absolutely love avocados. I've been in the avocado industry since my first days at Laverne Nursery 40 plus years ago. And I think that avocados should be a Southern California staple. I mean, every yard in Southern California should have an avocado tree. Now, I have lots of neighbors, lots of relatives that, you know, love to come over and eat fruit, but the trees that get the most attention when my neighbors are looking over the fence, or when my daughter comes over to visit with the Trader Joe's bag, the first thing she does is go out to the backyard and look at avocados. Pick some. Can I pick some avocado? Yeah, go ahead, pick some avocado. So my old philosophy on the small 8-foot tree, I originally tried to do avocados that way. And I realized right out the gate that an 8-foot avocado tree is only going to give me about 100 or 150 avocados a year. And my daughter will pick that many by herself. So I need to make sure that I'm getting enough avocados to supply half the people that I know, it seems like. Now, a 15-foot tree with a 10-foot pole and a basket picker, it's pretty easy to manage. And most of my avocado varieties will hold on the tree from beginning ripeness to peak ripeness for 4 months to 8 months. So I can pick Hass for probably 8 months out of the year. I can pick Reed for at least 4 months out of the year. I can pick Bacon for 3 or 4 months out of the year. Pinkerton 3 or 4 months out of the year. So by growing a few successive ripening varieties, if you just planted a Bacon or a Stewart, a Fuerte or a Pinkerton, a Hass, a Reed, with 4 of those varieties, you're going to have successive ripening avocados year round. In fact, you can probably pick 2 varieties at a time at almost any given month. So right now I can pick Hass, I can pick the first of my Reeds, and I just finished up the last of my Pinkertons. So I like to eat an avocado or a half an avocado every day. And I'm able to do that with the I actually have 9 different avocado varieties, but having all those successive ripening varieties together you can go out and harvest variety after variety after variety. And they are absolutely a superfood. They're not really as high in antioxidant as some things are, but they're so packed with other phytonutrients. 800 ORAC units for about a 4-ounce serving. And, you know, so if you eat a whole 8-ounce avocado, you're probably good for 1,600 antioxidant units. So I love avocados. It's one of my favorite trees. I've been, you know, growing them for decades. I grew up where my grandmother had Fuerte avocado in her backyard. It was one of the first trees that I learned how to climb in, and just remember as a child, you know, hanging around in that tree and eating avocados with a spoon when I was 6 years old. So I don't think I would want to live anywhere where I couldn't grow an avocado. That is me in my grandmother's avocado tree. So she's long gone, but the avocado tree is still there in the house in Gardena where they lived in the 1950s and 60s. So for those of you that aren't really familiar with Dave Wilson Nursery, we're actually the largest commercial grower of fruit and nut trees in the United States. This year, we're going to harvest about something just under 15 million trees. And we ship all over the country. We have shipped worldwide, but we're no longer shipping out of the continental United States. Well, we do ship to Hawaii and Alaska. We do lots of nut trees. We do lots of fruit trees. We do a fair amount of shade trees for wholesale and retail nurseries, and we supply a lot of trees to commercial agriculture. This is our website, www.davewilson.com. Very proud of our website. It's going through some renovations right now, but it is probably the most comprehensive website for general fruit tree information that you're going to find. I mean, we've got articles on there, we've got videos on there, we have variety recommendations on there, source list on there. So you can get lots of information on fruit trees and fruit growing from our website. So a few other little helpful hints when it comes to growing some of this material. There's some recommendations on the second to the last and the last page. I'm a big advocate of mulching. I think that I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I've been a heavy, serious mulcher for probably the better part of 40 years, and it's made my garden into a very, very beautiful place. And I know there are some things that you probably don't want to mulch real heavy around. I haven't found a fruit tree that doesn't like mulch yet. So 2 to 4 inch layer of mulch will help to keep the summer soil temperatures down, make better use of your water by about 50%, increase the bioactivity and the mycorrhizal activity in your soil, and probably keeps your weed seed germination down by 75 or 85%. So I haven't found a reason not to mulch yet. I will caution you that mulch is going to be, for the most part, an organic wood product. And although it's not flammable, it doesn't ignite, but it smolders. So if you're in an area where there's fire danger, I would keep my mulch away from anything that's combustible. Don't have a wood pile around it. Don't have a wooden shed. Don't put it right up against a wooden fence. You definitely want a buffer there if you're in a fire zone. But that's the only reason that I've found where mulch could be detrimental in some areas. But other than that, I'm a big advocate. Irrigation should always be deep and thorough with fruit trees. I'm not a proponent of the 5-station mindless irrigation timer. I advise anybody that has a mindless irrigation timer to make sure that they're thinking for the timer. You know, you're going to change your irrigation patterns on a regular basis throughout the year due to weather conditions, due to soil conditions, due to the tree's needs or the plant's needs. So, you know, you guys know that. I don't have to explain that to you. But irrigation water is precious right now, probably more precious right now than it has ever been in the history of California. So we all need to be good stewards of our water. Fertilizing, you know, for fruit trees, you're fertilizing for 2 different reasons. Number one, a young tree, I'm fertilizing to build and develop fruiting structure. So my first year or 2 years or 3 years worth of fertilization on a fruit tree is going to be dedicated to something that's a little higher in nitrogen so that I can grow and develop that structure. Now, once I get that tree to the point where I feel it's mature and I want it to begin to produce fruit, I'm going to change my fertilizing pattern completely. I'm going to go to something that is very low nitrogen, higher phosphorus, higher potash, trace elements, zinc, iron, and manganese, and I love a humic acid base. So I'm a big advocate of some of the Grow Power products. Grow Power Flower and Bloom is the 3-12-12 with humic acid base and all the trace elements. I've had excellent luck with that on my fruiting plants over the years. And that's the one that I like to recommend. You guys use whatever works best for you, but I highly recommend that product, and it's done me a lot of good over the years. Plenty of fruit, gives you strong, stable root stability, gives you a strong, long-term flower, so you don't have a weak flower. One of the problems with overfeeding with nitrogen is you develop a very, very weak flower. It'll bloom for a short period of time. The wind will knock it off, the rain will knock it out. But if you're using a good, strong, high P and K fertilizer with trace elements, you're going to have a very strong flower set. I watched my cherries bloom this year for 6 weeks. So they had a fruit set that actually ripened up over a 6-week period. So I had fruit as early as the middle of April, and I've just picked my last fruit here just recently. So the stronger the flower set, the better the fruit set you're going to get. The better the fruit quality you're going to get. So you want to feed with something that's going to give you that. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. Any